Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be discussing the prologue for the upcoming novel, The Winds of Winter. More specifically, I'm going into detail on the plot of the prologue and my favorite choices for the point of view character in this chapter. Before we talk about what I believe is going to happen in this prologue, I'm going to give you some background information on what we know about the prologue and the past events in the Riverlands where I believe the story is going to take place. So George stated in 2014 at Comic-Con that
who died at the Red Wedding, or did he marry a woman named Jane Westerling, who's still alive and will be seen in the prologue of Winds of Winter?
So the last we saw of Jane Westerling, she was with her family, an escort of 400 men led by Sir Forley Prester, and Edmure Tully was traveling along with them back to the Westerlands. Jamie fears this convoy will be ambushed, and I think it will be. A lot of people assume it's going to be the Brotherhood Without Banners, but I think it's going to be the Blackfish Tully and his Tully Garrison that gave up their arms at Riverrun. So I'm going to give some quick background information on the Riverlands before I get into what I think is going to happen. We know by the end of Book 5 that all the Riverlords have bent the knee to the Iron Throne. However, their loyalty is shaky at best. It's a very similar situation to what the North is going through right now. At the siege at Riverrun, we know that several Riverlords are missing, and the ones that are there subtly try and protect Edmure Tully from being murdered by the Freys. Both Lords Piper and Vance air their grievances with the Freys, and I believe if this convoy gets raided by the Blackfish, that they will not have any problem with hiding the Blackfish or Edmure after this occurs. Another hint that this convoy will be ambushed is Edmure being extremely happy after the Blackfish escapes, and Jamie even notes he looks a little too happy for somebody who's about to spend the rest of his life in prison, quote unquote. Another fact that needs mentioning is that the Brotherhood Without Banners splits in two after Beric Dondarrion resurrects Lady Stoneheart and gives his life to do that. The members that stay loyal to Beric, even though he's dead, are Edric Dane, his squire, the Mad Huntsman, Greenbeard, Angui the Archer, Merida Moontown, Waddy the Miller, Swampy Meg, and John O'Nutton. Those are all listed in the appendix of A Feast for Crows, and the rest are listed under Lady Stoneheart's Brotherhood Without Banners. So we can assume there's two separate groups, and I have a very educated guess on where each group is operating. I can get into a whole nother video on why I believe that Hollow Hill is located north of the Red Fork and not south of the Red Fork like some people believe, but I will just leave it at, I believe it is either at Old Stones or the teats that surround Pennytree. Now moving back to the Riverlords and their dubious loyalty, Davin Lannister actually thinks that the Riverlords might be killing his foraging parties that he's sending out to gather food. Both Lords Bracken and Blackwood both make their admiration of the Blackfish known, and they also reference the deaths at the Red Wedding and the crimes committed by Sir Armory Lorch, the Mountain, and Vargo Hoat. With that all said about the Riverlords, I believe there's going to be a Riverlands Remember situation where they're going to rise up against the Freys and put the Tullys back in power. It is a much easier situation as Edmure Tully is still alive and he's the rightful Lord of Riverrun. Moving back to the siege at Riverrun, we know the Brotherhood is at least active around the siege, as there's hanged corpses of the foragers found, and there's signal fires seen up high, as reported by Davin Lannister. I believe that there is a spy for both groups of the Brotherhood inside the siege camp, Tom of Sevenstreams, who is actually left alone with Edmure for an extended period of time, and they may be able to communicate some sort of plan. But we do know that Tom of Sevenstreams informs Lady Stoneheart that Ryman Frey is leaving the camp, and she's able to kill him and hang him at Freyr Market. I believe when we put all these facts together, in addition to Jaime Lannister's thoughts and Jenna Lannister's not so subtle foreshadowing about the Tully Garrison, that we will see the Blackfish attacking this convoy at some point during the prologue. And I believe that he will have the help of the Brotherhood Without Banners and possibly his loyal Riverlords. So with the background information out of the way, let's get into setting the stage for the plot of the prologue. I believe that Lady Stoneheart and the Blackfish have two individual plans that may or may not occur at the exact same time. The first plan I'm going to get into is the Blackfish's plan. I believe the Blackfish is going to travel south from the Red Fork and meet up with his men, gathering weapons from the loyal Riverlords that Davin Lannister describes as wolfish earlier on. We know that Edmure spent most of the day inside Riverrun before yielding it, and he possibly told Brynden about plans for Edmure to travel to Castle Rock as a prisoner. I believe that the Blackfish will ambush this escort in the hills before the Golden Tooth. As I've stated earlier, I think the Blackfish is primarily going to be in the southern area of the Riverlands, gathering up support and his garrison while getting weapons and supplies. I believe that he will run into Beric's Brotherhood or the Mad Huntsman, who may join him, as Edmure was protective of the small folk during the Battle of the Fords, and he has a better reputation as a Tully than any of the Freys ruling the Riverlands do. And I also believe that neither of these groups will turn down the chance to kill Lannisters, as at least the Mad Huntsman hates them very much. We also know that Tom of Sevenstreams has a son that was working with the Mad Huntsman in A Storm of Swords, and he may be the point of contact between Edmure's rescue plan and the Beric Brotherhood. So with that said, the Blackfish, the Tully Garrison, and the Beric Brotherhood will be ambushing this escort. Speaking on the men that the Blackfish will have with him, the Tully Garrison from Riverrun, I believe this number to be around 1,000 to under 1,000, maybe 900 or 800. And the reason I believe this is because that the men are given 3 days rations upon leaving and swearing to lay down their arms and not attack the Lannisters. We are repeatedly reminded that due to the devastation of the War of the Five Kings, that the realm is on the verge of starvation, so I don't believe that the Lannisters are going to be feeding a large number of troops with winter coming and low food stores all across the board. Jenna Lannister kind of hints that about 9 and 10 will rise again, so I'm putting the number a little bit lower than the total number. And that's all I have for that theory. Let's move on. Now I'm going to talk about the prologue point of view character for the Winds of Winter, and I'm going to talk about past prologue point of view characters as a way to narrow down my choices. So we know that most prologue point of view characters have a very tragic element to their backstory. Will's is probably the least tragic, being that he's a poacher that was caught and has the choice between going to the wall or losing his hand. Maester Creston's tragic element in his story is that he believes Stannis to be the son he never had, and by following Melisandre, he believes that Stannis will kill his brother Renly, and he tries to stop that and dies doing so. Chet is a man who is robbed of his cushy position and plans to kill Samwell Tarly, and he also murders a woman for rejecting him, and he hates being ugly. Pate is a failed maester who hates his own name because it reminds him of a pig boy story, and he also robs a key off of a maester who has a neurodegenerative disease to pay for a prostitute. And Vermeer Sixskins has a ton of issues that I'm not even going to get into. He does a lot of bad stuff. I mean, if you read his chapter, you know a lot of abominations going on in that chapter. So we know that the character is going to have some sort of tragic element to their backstory, and now I'm going to get into the second rule that I believe to be true. With characters that are new in the series, they are almost always at a location that we have not seen, like Will at the Wall, Maester Crescent at Dragonstone, or Pate at Old Town. Meanwhile, in locations that we have seen, we always have a point of view character that has been seen before, like Chet at the Fist of the First Men, or Vermeer Sixskins Beyond the Wall. So knowing this, and knowing that we're in the Riverlands, we can assume that the character we're going to see in the prologue, or see through the eyes of, is going to be a character we've seen before in the Riverlands primarily. Just want to add a quick side note that all these characters are lowborn / not nobles. So with that all said, let's move on to my choices. My first choice for prologue point of view character is Angui the Archer, a very skilled archer from the Dornish Marches, who first appeared as the winner of the archery tournament at the Hands Tourney all the way back in A Game of Thrones. We know then that he joins the Brotherhood without banners, and he's encountered by Arya in A Storm of Swords. We also know that he is in an ambush scene at the Burning Septry, where he kills a ton of brave companions with his bow and archery skills. The tragic element of his backstory for me is that he won 10,000 gold dragons at the Hands Tourney. He ends up squandering all this gold on brothels, clothing, and then ends up as a freedom fighter in the Riverlands instead of a very well-off peasant. He's also extremely skilled in an ambush like that we saw at the Burning Septry, and I think that's a very big point to him being in this prologue chapter as the point of view character. A quick side note before we move on, I just want to say that Angui is an extremely skilled archer, as noted by him beating Sir Balin Swan, who is quote unquote superb with a bow. That's all I want to add. The Mad Huntsman is my other choice for a point of view character. I believe that the Mad Huntsman has a very tragic backstory in which that the Lannisters murdered his family and killed his dogs as well as his sheep. And we know this is a major part. Another part is that he is located somewhere in the southern region of the Riverlands. His headquarters is usually at the Stony Sept, but the last we saw of him, he was traveling south of the Mander to gather grain for the common folk, and he should be back by now, as that was 2 books ago. I believe that the Mad Huntsman's ferocity as a combatant, his hatred for the Lannisters, and his tragic backstory, plus the fact that he may be bringing up horses to aid in this ambush as he went south of the Mander for more than just food, leads to him being my number 2 choice for point of view character. The next choice is Pello Tyrosh or Greenbeard. The only detraction I have is we don't know any tragic backstory of his, so that's one thing that George would have to write in. We know that he's traveling south of the Mander with the Mad Huntsman to grab weapons, horses, and food for the common folk, and we can assume he'll be back as that was 2 books ago, like I said. I do think that George likes to give us lore on the Free Cities. He loves world building in the Free Cities, as evidenced by introducing Ariahota and a lot of lore tidbits that were introduced during that whole Dorne plotline. We do know that Greenbeard was one of the leaders in the southern group of the Brotherhood Without Banners, so that may make him an important option. But overall, I believe he's less likely to be the prologue point of view character, just because he doesn't really have that much of a tragic backstory that we know of. And last, but certainly not least, is Reynold Westerling, who I believe is the least likely to appear as the point of view character in the prologue, but I think there's a very good chance that he shows up in the Winds of Winter, as he was killed off screen at the Red Wedding. The last we hear of his fate, which is in Jaime's chapter in A Feast for Crows. He was shot once in the shoulder and once in the gut. Then he fell into the Green Fork, and they assume him to be dead. We all know that if a character dies off screen or ambiguously, that there's a pretty good chance they're actually not dead, like Davos when he dies in A Feast for Crows, or Brandon Rickon being killed by Theon in A Clash of Kings. So I think there's a pretty good chance he's alive, but I don't think there's a great chance that he'll be the point of view character. I don't think George is going to fake killing off a character a couple books ago just to bring him back to die in the prologue. I think he's going to play a more important role in the story ahead. But I do believe he does have a tragic element of his backstory, as he was betrayed by the Westerling family, by them, betraying the Starks at the Red Wedding. And I do think that he has some interesting point of view options, as we don't know where he's been, so we can get filled in on that. We get to see what happened to Grey Wind, RIP. But as I said, I believe he's the least likely to appear, as he's highborn, and George isn't going to fake killing off a character just to bring them back and kill them in the prologue. But I do think he'll show up at some point, and he's a very interesting character to learn about. Now I'm going to give a brief overview on the contents of the prologue, like specific details that are going to happen during it. I believe the prologue is going to start around early morning, somewhere in the western part of the Riverlands, very close to the Westerlands, but not yet in it. We are going to see the Blackfish ordering his men around. I assume he's going to have around 700 men. This is including the Tully Garrison from Riverrun, and it's going to be including the men that he's recruited from the Brotherhood Without Banners, and maybe some men given to him by the loyal Riverlords secretly. We know Sir Forley Prester has around 400 men, with about 80 mounted knights. I think Sir Forley Prester, while undermanned compared to the Blackfish, will have the more heavily armed guys. But the main advantage for the Blackfish is he knows the terrain, and I believe he'll be able to kill Sir Forley Prester's outriders and scouts, which should allow him to take him as unaware as possible. This ambush, funnily enough, takes place around the same area where the first battle of the War of the Five Kings took place, the battle under the hills of Golden Tooth, where the Riverlords lost and Jaime Lannister and his troops won. Now in the new War for the Riverlands, I believe that the Riverlords are actually going to win this battle / ambush. Like I said, I think the Blackfish will win this ambush. I do think he's going to be able to rescue Edmure. Jane, I believe there's a whole nother plan going on. I kind of hinted at it before, but I think Lady Stoneheart has captured Jamie, and she's going to use him as a sort of Trojan horse to rescue Jane because she believes Jane is pregnant with Rob's baby, which might be the case. I believe that Jamie might show up in this prologue and be acting a little strangely, grab Jane, say she's needed at River Run for some sort of hostage situation or something like that, and he's going to take her and leave. Upon seeing this Tully ambush occurring, because he's agreed not to take up arms against the Tullys and Starks. So he will flee with Jane. The Blackfish will rescue Edmure. The point of view character will be badly injured in this attack, but not dead at the moment. There might be a conflict between Lady Stoneheart and the Blackfish before the Blackfish realizes that she's his undead niece. I do think the prologue character is going to die after the chapter's over, kind of similar to how Chet dies after the prologue chapter ends in A Storm of Swords. That's going to be it for the video, guys. I want to thank you all for watching. Please let me know how I did. This is my first real theory video, and I'm trying to get the hang of editing these videos, and it took me a while to get this thing done. Please drop a like, comment if you agree, comment if you disagree, and tell me what video you guys want next. I'm going to put a little 2 images up for those who watch to the end. Those are kind of hints on what I'm thinking about making a video on. And until next time, peace out.